The Rock has come back. No, I'm just kidding, guys. But anyways, what is poppin', guys? Kyle here, back on the podcast channel once again. Today we are back for another edition of Why Modern WWE Sucks. And I know last week we did an episode, it was about Saturday night's main event, why it was a perfect example of modern WWE's bad booking. Now, originally this video was going to be about the women's division, but it seems like the Royal Rumble has smoothed out that division. Certainly I could talk about that in the video. I probably will pretty soon here. But what it came down to when I was thinking about was like, the only thing that I, at this point, have a problem with in the women's division is the promos. And there's certainly, as a whole, like I think the promos are really lagging the product down. So anyways, let's hop into it here. So now I'm talking here like, okay, the promos are lagging the product down. Well, how is that so? And first of all, what is a promo? So a promo is something that a wrestler does. Doesn't matter really where they do it. They can have a video promo, like a video package, like Gunther seems to do all the time due to his absence from being on Raw. But a promo is something that a wrestler does to build hype for a match or for an event that they're particularly doing. And once you understand that, I think this video will be a whole lot easier to understand where I'm coming from here. So, what I find nowadays is that promos are usually about one or two things. It's either about how I'm gonna beat you, not me literally, but like, you know what I mean. The wrestler will be like, oh, I'm gonna beat you, or oh, I'm coming for that championship. Those two things I find are the only two things that promos are about these days. And look, I get that that's WWE. It's like, that's what it is. Like, this is wrestlers competing for championships. I get that's what it is. But to a certain extent, when you look back at the past and you saw The Rock, you know, he'd come out there and be like, jabroni, like, right? He'd come out there and say terrible stuff all the time. Cena even. Roman even. Oh yeah, that last heel, like Roman's last run when he was the champion for 4 years, he had some killer promos during that run. And right, that was what I was reaching at, right? And even literally last year, the WrestleMania 41, the Road to WrestleMania, which we're on right now, right? Literally even last year, there were some great promos in that run. You know, The Rock was there, Roman was there, Cody was there. You know, I'll mention Cody later on in this video and Seth as well, but those two were even having good promos then. So now you're probably wondering, why do I think now all of a sudden the promos have lagged down the product and why are they bad now when literally last year I was fine with them? The reason why now, there's really no interesting stories anymore. Like, I think the last interesting story that we had in WWE was the Bloodline story where Roman Reigns was trying to get back his Ula Fala, right? There was some interesting promos in that. I will give him that, you know. But that's a whole other thing. It's like, I have read somewhere where Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, they actually write that stuff. So, you know, it seems like whatever Triple H is not writing is doing good, right? So maybe he just shouldn't be booking the shows. I mean, me and certainly a bunch of other fans have come to that conclusion here. But when I'm looking at a storyline, one of the things I see is, what are the wrestlers saying between each other? Is it something good, or is it just about like, oh, I'm just gonna beat you, I'm gonna take back the title that I never lost yet, right? Rhea Ripley's back, I guess, right? You know, she'll certainly be mentioned in this video too, but we'll get to her later, right? When you're talking about, right, when you remember the best storylines that WWE created, chances are there were good promos that made those stories interesting. And I know this can be kind of a double-edged sword, like with the point that I'm about to bring up here, that like usually in promos, the reason why I think they suck is because there's no substance to them. Like right, for example, this week, I know Tiffany Stratton, she just had a match on SmackDown. You know, she was defending the title against Nia Jax, right? And I know one of the things that she does in all her promos is like, it's Tiffy time, right? So like every week now, it's like, right, that is something that I would say that makes her stand out from anybody else. That's something that she says that makes her stand out from anybody else. But the thing is, I don't like it though, because it's so annoying. I mean that's obviously an opinion, but it's like there's nothing else to her character but that. That's the only thing she really comes out there and says. It's like, it's tippy time, and at tippy time I'm gonna beat you, and it's like, you see what I mean? How like even if you say something that like stands out, it still doesn't work. Now I know that like The Rock and Stone Cold and all the great promo workers, they have that element to them. Like that's what they do, but something about just this new era of wrestlers, the pieces of the puzzle just don't click. And look, I know there's many aspects to a promo, and of course, any of the aspects that there is can be done bad. Like, I think, for example, a lot of the reasons today, like why the promos suck, is that they don't have the intensity like they used to. Like, I think LA Knight is one of the best promo workers that we got in WWE right now. Of course, you got CM Punk and, Cena when he's there, and, The Rock, of course, too, when he's there. But outside of that, I really can't think of anybody that stands out on the mic, really. I mean, Solo, I think, does a very good job, I guess. His is interesting because, like, he kind of, like, says stuff like, acknowledge. He doesn't, like, scream at anything. Like, Roman would kind of just scream and be like, acknowledge me, right? He would do something like that. And it's interesting I say that because it's something that is memorable, right? I think one of the things that these promos today are missing is that they aren't memorable. Like, they all kind of mesh together. Like, what these wrestlers are saying, it's like, I'll beat you, or, I'm coming for that title, right? You can say that 1,000 times in one, and I'll forget it every single time. However, when somebody says something unique like, The Rock has come back, right? I remember that, right? And the thing is, too, when you have a catchphrase and something like that, it can, of course, be something that I don't like. Like, I'll admit that, like, Nia Jax and Bayley, when they do their promos, like, yeah, they say stuff that's not necessary. I mean, of course, they do the cliche stuff as well, but, like, they kind of throw stuff in there that isn't, it's like, you loser and all this stuff. Like, that stuff's, I mean, it's funny, of course. That doesn't mean I like it necessarily, but I would say they are trying. But it's just not something that I would like. And then you got Cody Rhodes, I think he was probably the reason why I wanted to make this video. Because this guy just goes out there every week and is like, Washington, D.C., what do you want to talk about? Libations. I respect you, I love you, right? He is the king. He is the king of that stuff. I mean, he literally is. Like, if you did something every week, I would say you're the king of it. Right? And that's what he does every week. He's the king of mid-promos. He's the king of, I would say, every single reason why the promos suck these days. Cody has them all. His delivery, he doesn't have the intensity. He says the same stuff every week. He doesn't say anything intriguing. He has no catchphrase. Every single thing that is bad about the promos today, Cody Rhodes has. And then I want to get back to the intensity part too. So, remember back in the day when, like, John Cena and JBL, they were feuding, and it doesn't even have to be them specifically, right? Just any feud back in the day, right? And look, I know I'm turning into that dad that's like, no, back in my day, right? I know I'm turning into that person, but I think it's important for this conversation because the promos these days just suck, right? The reason why I mention this is that almost all of these wrestlers nowadays are like, I respect you, I love you, right? They will say this on the mic. They'll be like, I want the title, but I respect you. It's like, okay, I'm thinking here, if I was a wrestler, yeah, I mean, obviously I respect the person in the ring. It's like, I don't want to kill the person that I'm having a match with. It is a performative art after all. I don't want to kill somebody in the ring, you know what I mean? But to a certain extent on the mic, you need to have a little bit of heat for someone. It's like, somebody is coming after you. Somebody wants to beat you, right? Isn't that something that's supposed to make you angry? Isn't that something that's supposed to make you have intensity? Isn't that something that's supposed to drive you, make you want to beat them? It seems like that's just lost nowadays. It may be just me, but I feel like that's something that's lost nowadays.
Now, I know we say that's a lost art, but I think there's one guy in particular, and I'm sure there's probably some other wrestlers that I'll think of that are currently on the roster right now that have this skill. And the person I'm talking about is LA Knight. Now, back in the day, it was routine that you'd have a backstage interviews, but the only guy that really seems to do them nowadays is LA Knight, and let me tell you, he's the guy for it. Just trust me. I think everything about
promos that I like, he has. He has the intensity. He's got the catchphrases. LA Knight, yeah, that's right. And the thing that I forgot to mention about promos is that if a wrestler can bring in something interesting, like, or just bring in some, like, aspect of roasting. I mean, of course, it's funny, obviously. Some that The Rock did a lot. But LA Knight does this a lot. Anytime they can start doing something like that, I will generally remember more, and that makes it a good promo. Now, the thing about Rhea Ripley, I was mentioning her earlier in the video here, and the reason why I wanted to mention her is that is she has one of the traits I don't like about promos, which it's similar to Tiffany Stratton, where they only just say like one or two things, and the crowd just goes crazy about it. And the crowd, I remember, like, when I was watching SmackDown this week, and there was some questionable things that the crowd did that made me just be like, okay, you know, I gotta make it another reason why modern WWE sucks, right? But the crowd will go crazy over Rhea Ripley only saying, like, "Mommy don't talk," right? So she'll say something like that, and then the crowd will just go crazy about it. Now, I don't have a problem with her having a catchphrase or whatever, but it's like, if you only say one or two things, it's kind of boring, right? You know what I mean? Like, LA Knight don't say one or two things. I mean, he has his catchphrase, like, LA Knight, yeah, right? He has that, but that isn't, like, the only thing he says when he's on the mic, right? And then you got the other part of it, too. I remember, it must have been the first part, I think, of this series that we're doing right now. I mentioned the fact that, like, the wrestlers glaze each other. They'll be, like, glazing. No, like, they'll just glaze, like, how good the company is. They'll be like, oh, we got the best numbers ever. We're selling out the arenas. And, you know, the product has never been better than this. Cody, you're the quarterback of the WWE, right? They'll do all this glazing stuff, which just makes me wonder, you know, did they do this stuff in the Attitude Era? Did this happen in the golden era, right? You know, the 80s with Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man Randy Savage, right? You know, we're speaking of promos, right? I think that's another guy we should mention that, you know, he just has killer promos. Like, if I was, like, being a wrestler, if I wanted to, like, work on promos and I was a wrestler, I would take after him, because you know his voice, he was really putting it on there, you know? He was really acting it out, you know? Macho Man was certainly very interesting. But back to the point about how, like, the wrestlers will just, like, glaze or whatever. I'm like, what value does this really bring to, like, how does this matter to the story? Like, okay, that's great, the WWE's doing big numbers, which I don't really think it is. I mean, I'm looking at the ratings here for Raw on Netflix. I mean, Triple H, look at that. That doesn't look like it's necessarily booming, right? But in fact, I would argue, if they think it's too good, then what's the point? I feel like, no, because I just thought of an idea for a video. I'll mention it. It's how competition makes you do better things, right? Because, you know, it seems like that's what WCW did to WWE in the late 90s there during the Attitude Era. And anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys want to see the next part of this series, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And with all of that being said, remember, guys, we the ones.